Welcome to today's deep dive. We are genuinely thrilled to have you sitting here with us today because, frankly, the journey we're about to take is, well, it's going to fundamentally reconsider almost everything you think you know about your own daily reality.
It really is. It's a massive paradigm shift.
Completely. We are going to examine what it actually means to observe the world around you, what it means to remember your past, and what it simply means to exist as a conscious being within the universe.
Right.
So if you're listening to this right now and you have ever looked up at the night sky and wondered about your place in that terrifyingly huge grand scheme of things, or if you've ever felt a really profound, unexplainable sense of déjà vu.
Or honestly, even if you have ever simply held a heavy stone in your hand and wondered why it feels so substantial, so permanent.
Yes, exactly. If any of that sounds like you, this deep dive is entirely custom-tailored for you.
It's a remarkable set of concepts we're laying out today. We're going to be challenging some of the most basic, deeply ingrained assumptions that every single one of us holds about the nature of existence. And we're going to start with the big one.
The really big one.
Yeah. We are going to start by dismantling the very flow of time itself.
Which sounds completely absurd, I know. But our guide for this journey makes a shockingly compelling case. We are diving into an incredibly dense, fascinating, and just mind-bending collection of documents known as the Atmabhan Papers.
Subtitled Memory, Time, Consciousness, and the Geometry of Reality.
Right. It's written by Shrikant Bhosale, who publishes his work under the name Atmabhan Pandit. He's an independent theoretical physicist operating out of Twist Pool Labs, and he's been conducting research on something he calls the ISL framework.
And the source material we're pulling from today is an archive of his research papers, his philosophical essays, and even some of his creative writings from the year 2026.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the sheer breadth of Bhosale's work. The archive is staggering. He doesn't stay in one lane at all.
Not even a little bit.
He moves seamlessly between hardcore theoretical physics, the philosophy of mind, and these deeply personal, almost phenomenological observations about human emotion.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but he is fundamentally trying to build a bridge between the cold, hard, objective mathematics of the cosmos and the warm, messy, highly subjective reality of human experience.
Okay, before we even get into the heavy text, I have to describe the cover of this book to you, the listener, because it perfectly sets the exact vibe for what we're about to unpack. Picture this in your mind.
It's quite the visual.
It really is. The backdrop is this stunning, swirling cosmic star chart, right? It's filled with deep space galaxies and glowing nebulae. But overlaid on top of that wild cosmic dust is this rigid, glowing geometric grid.
A very precise grid.
Yeah, and the grid is bending and warping as it curves over the horizon of a massive shadowed planet at the bottom of the frame.
It immediately evokes Einstein's curved space-time.
Exactly. And sitting right in the center of all this, on this rugged, ancient-looking stone platform, is the silhouette of a person in deep meditation.
Just sitting there.
Yeah. And they're radiating this brilliant golden light. And surrounding this meditating figure are these floating, almost mystical symbols. Above their head, there's a glowing, hyper-realistic eye enclosed within a golden triangle.
Which is striking on its own.
Right. To the left, there's an antique, ornate pocket clock with Roman numerals, and its internal gears are completely exposed. And to the right, a classic atomic model with these bright electrons tracing glowing orbital paths around a central nucleus.
It really is this absolutely perfect visual synthesis of human consciousness, ancient mysticism, the measurement of time, and the fundamental quantum physics of reality.
It sets the tone so well.
It's a striking visual metaphor for the entire thesis of the archive, that meditating figure right in the center. That is the observer, that is you, sitting right at the intersection of the cosmic scale, the quantum scale, and the temporal scale.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that brings me to the core premise of this entire deep dive. The hook that absolutely grabbed me right from the start.
The river metaphor.
Yes. What if time isn't a river? Think about it. We all grew up with this exact metaphor, right? Time is a river flowing through the universe. It carries us helplessly from the past through the present moment and into the future.
It's how we structure our whole lives.
Exactly. The universe is the riverbed and time is the water. But Bhosale asks us to completely invert that entire worldview. What if time is actually a ruler?
Right.
And what if the universe isn't the thing holding the ruler? What if you, the observer, are the one holding it up to measure the universe?
It is a radical proposition. To say that time does not exist out there in the void, but rather exists exclusively in your active measurement.
It really bends the mind.
It does. And to navigate this, we're going to break our journey down. We're going to explore the physics of memory and why the universe, at its most fundamental mathematical level, actually operates perfectly well without a clock. From there, we'll look at the illusion of the present moment. We'll examine the actual architecture of your mind, looking at how you process surprise, why randomness might be a complete illusion, and why forgetting is an essential feature of your biological design.
I love that section.
And ultimately, we're going to venture into some profound territory. We'll look at the science of our dreams, why human beings cry, and how the essence of who you are persists long after you die.
It is going to be a wild ride. Let's just jump straight into the deep end. The foundational claim of the Atmabhan Papers is that time is not a fundamental constituent of nature.
It's just not there.
The universe does not need time. Bhosale argues that the universe operates on causal structure, physical laws, quantum fields, and geometry. And absolutely none of those things require a ticking clock.
Which is hard to swallow at first.
Really hard. I mean, wait, hold on. I wore a watch today. I have a schedule. I age. What do you mean the universe doesn't need time?
This is where we have to look at the underlying physics. And specifically, we need to look at something called the time-independent Schrödinger equation.
Okay, slow down. Time-independent Schrödinger equation.
Yeah.
That sounds incredibly intimidating. Are you saying there's a foundational math equation for the universe that literally doesn't have a variable for time in it? How does anything actually happen?
It's a great question. So in quantum mechanics, the standard Schrödinger equation describes how a quantum state changes over time. But there is a specific crucial form of it, the time-independent version.
Okay.
It yields these exact solutions called stationary states. Now imagine a guitar string. When you pluck it, you get a standing wave.
Right, it vibrates.
The string is vibrating, but the shape of the wave isn't moving left or right along the string. It's stationary. In quantum mechanics, these stationary states describe energy configurations of a quantum system where absolutely nothing evolves.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. There is no probability distribution changing over time. There is no letter T for time in the equation at all. The math perfectly describes the state of the system, and time simply isn't a factor.
So it's not just a mathematical shortcut, like physicists just leaving out the T to make the math easier for a minute.
Not at all. Bhosale points out that these stationary states are not just math tricks or rough approximations. They are some of the most precisely verified, rigorously tested results in the entire history of physics.
Wow.
They represent the natural, undisturbed baseline of the universe. The universe, at its foundational quantum level, is a pure geometry that operates flawlessly without a clock.
I love how Bhosale grounds this abstract math in a really simple, everyday analogy. He tells us to think about a thermometer in your living room.
That's a great one.
It really is. A thermometer does not create the heat in the room. It doesn't carry the heat from the kitchen into the hallway. It is simply a measuring instrument.
Right.
It interacts with the kinetic energy of the air molecules and gives you a number, a scalar, so you can make a comparison. You can say, this room is 72 degrees, which is hotter than the 68-degree room.
Making it relative.
Exactly. But if you take that thermometer off the wall and throw it out outside, the heat in the room is still there.
The room doesn't freeze.
Right. The thermal energy remains completely intact. The molecules are still bouncing around. The only thing that is gone is the temperature reading.
That's the perfect analogy. And Bhosale applies this directly to the concept of time. He argues that time is just a scalar.
Just a number.
Exactly. In physics, a scalar is a quantity that has magnitude but no direction. It's just a number on a scale. Time is the thermometer of events.
The thermometer of events. I love that phrasing.
It makes so much sense. The universe provides the raw material, the events, the causal structure, the underlying geometry, but the observer, you, me, a dog, any finite system with a memory capacity, we provide the ruler. We hold up the scalar of time to measure those events.
We're the ones numbering them.
Precisely. We locate them relative to one another. We sequence them into our before and an after.
Right.
If you were to somehow completely remove every single observer from the universe, the events are still there, the causal order remains, but the duration, the sequence, the lived, felt experience of time passing, that completely vanishes.
Wow.
The stage is still there, but the play has stopped being recorded.
Let's make this even more concrete for you listening. There is a brilliant thought experiment from the text that really made this click for me. I want you to imagine a stone. Just a regular heavy stone resting on the edge of a high cliff.
Okay, picture the stone.
Now, a gust of wind comes, the stone tips over the edge, it plummets through the air for a few seconds, and it smashes into the ground below. Now, ask yourself this. Does the stone experience that fall as happening in time?
If we think about what experiencing time requires, the answer is no.
Right. For the stone to experience time, it would have to be able to compare where it is right now, hovering in the air halfway down the cliff, to where it was a moment ago resting at the top of the cliff.
It would need to hold those two concepts.
It would need to possess a concept of a moment ago.
Right.
Which means, fundamentally, it would need a memory.
But the stone has no memory. It remembers nothing. It just falls. It is simply an event occurring within the universe's causal structure. Gravity acts on mass. It is complete and lawful.
No past to no future.
None. There is no before and there is no after for the stone. There is only the continuous state of the trajectory.
But, and this is the crucial flip, when you stand on the cliff and you watch that stone fall, you are doing something the stone is entirely incapable of doing.
They're measuring.
You are constantly comparing what your retinas are registering in this exact microsecond to the visual memory your brain stored just a microsecond ago. You are holding two data points simultaneously. You are generating a sequence.
Right.
You are the one deriving the concept of duration from that internal comparison. The time isn't out there inside the falling stone. The time is being actively generated in your mind through your act of witnessing it fall.
What's fascinating here is the massive question this raises. It's what makes this framework so challenging but rewarding. We so easily confuse the two things. We confuse the stage with the ruler.
We mix them up constantly.
We do. The stage is the universe. The vast causal structure, the space-time geometry, the ordered set of all physical events, that is objective reality. But the ruler, the before and after, the sequence, the feeling of temporal flow, that is an epistemological tool.
It's just a tool.
It is a biological and cognitive utility. It belongs entirely to the observer. We bring our little ruler to the massive cosmic stage to make sense of the performance.
Right.
We assume the universe is a flowing river because we are constantly swimming through it, furiously paddling our arms. But the flow is our own motion. The flow is our own constant, desperate act of measuring.
That completely changes how I view just sitting in a silent room. I used to think, well, the universe's clock is ticking right now. But if Bhosale is right, the universe isn't keeping a master cosmic clock at all. It just is. We are the ones ticking.
Exactly. We are the ticking clocks.
But, okay, let's follow the logic here. If time is just our ruler, our observer memory measuring things, what exactly are we measuring? What is the universe actually made of if it's not made of time? And that brings us to this massive concept of the universe's memory. Bhosale introduces this variable he calls M sub U, universal memory.
Yes. Because if observer memory, which he denotes as M sub A for memory of the agent, is what generates time, we have to understand what the universe is doing on its end of the transaction.
It takes two to tango.
It does. And Bhosale argues that the universe absolutely has its own form of memory, M sub U, but it's vital to understand it's not a memory like ours. It doesn't have files and folders. The universe doesn't have a hippocampus.
Right, it's not storing photos.
The universe remembers by being. It remembers through the persistence of mass and structural resonance.
And to really grasp that, we have to realize that the universe actually forgets almost everything it tries to make. He talks about unstable subatomic particles, like muons.
A great example.
A muon is created in a high-energy collision. It pops into existence, lasts for maybe 2 microseconds, and then it decays. It vanishes entirely.
It's gone.
The universe essentially ran the pattern of a muon for a microscopic fraction of an instant and then let it go. The universe did not remember the muon.
And this is where Bhosale introduces a really beautiful mechanical analogy to explain what does get remembered by the cosmos. He asks us to think of a drum, a physical acoustic drum.
Like a snare drum.
Right. When you strike the skin of a drum with a mallet, what actually happens in that first millisecond? You create a violently chaotic, incredibly complex wave of vibrations. Thousands of different chaotic frequencies are all mixed together in that initial kinetic strike.
Just a mess of noise.
But almost all of those chaotic frequencies die out almost instantly. They clash with each other, they cancel each other out through destructive interference. What remains after that chaotic birth?
The tone.
Only the specific stable frequencies that perfectly fit the physical circular geometry of the drum. The drum selects its tones. It only sustains the vibrations that resonate harmoniously with its own physical boundaries.
Right. The drum remembers only what fits. Everything else is discarded. Now, Bhosale tells us to scale that concept up to the literal fabric of space-time itself.
The big jump.
Imagine the entire universe as the ultimate drumhead, coupled to vibrating quantum fields. In this view, a fundamental particle isn't a tiny, solid billiard ball. It is a mode of vibration.
Yes.
An electron is simply a vibration pattern that the universe's geometry knows how to keep. It finds a stable resonance mode, what mathematicians call an Arnold tongue, and it locks into it.
That concept of the Arnold tongue is really crucial here. In the mathematical study of coupled oscillating systems, an Arnold tongue is a defined region of stability.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
If a system's parameters, its frequency, its amplitude fall into that tongue, the oscillation locks in. It becomes incredibly robust and stable, resisting outside noise and disturbances. Think of two pendulum clocks on the same wall eventually syncing up their swings.
Oh, right. They eventually match up.
But Bhosale is suggesting that the fundamental particles of our universe, the electrons, the protons, the quarks, are simply the vibrational patterns that happen to fall into the deepest, most stable Arnold tongues of the vacuum geometry shortly after the Big Bang.
He found the groove.
Everything else, the infinite sea of other possible, unstable, chaotic particle configurations, was forgotten immediately. The electron is what remains because it found the ultimate stable rhythm of the cosmic drum.
And this leads to what might be one of the most poetic and staggering claims in the entire archive. He writes that mass is physical memory.
It's a profound statement.
Let that sink in for you listening. Mass is physical memory. When you ask a physicist why an electron has the exact specific mass that it does, the mathematical answers get incredibly complex. But Bhosale's philosophical answer is that mass is the universe's physical memory of a stable resonance pattern.
Just existing is remembering.
Think about a single electron that has existed since the dawn of the universe, 13.8 billion years ago. It doesn't have a tiny hard drive storing a diary of its long life. Its absolute unwavering consistency through time is the record. To exist persistently is to be remembered by the universe.
It is a profound paradigm shift in how we view the physical world. Mass is duration made manifest. When you pick up a heavy stone, going back to our earlier example, you aren't just feeling the curvature of space-time we call gravitational pull.
You're feeling something deeper.
You are feeling the accumulated stubbornness of trillions upon trillions of particles that have absolutely refused to be forgotten by the universe.
Accumulated stubbornness.
Each individual particle in that stone is a tiny, localized island of stability that locked into its resonance tongue billions of years ago, and it is fiercely, continuously resisting dissolution. The sheer weight in your hand is the physical sensation of the universe's structural memory pushing back against you.
I just can't get over that phrasing. Accumulated stubbornness.
Cool.
So let's map this out. We have the universe's memory, m sub u, persisting all around us as mass and stable structure.
Right.
And we have our own observer memory, m sub a, holding up the ruler of time, constantly comparing now to a moment ago. So how did the two actually interact? How do we experience this massive, stubborn universe? Bhosale calls this the connection event.
The connection event is the exact dynamic point of contact. Neither universal memory nor observer memory generates the experience of lived time in isolation.
They need each other.
Think about it. The universe's memory, m sub u, without any observer present, is just silent, static geometry. It is complete, it is lawful, but it is unread. It has a structural history, but absolutely no temporal experience of that history.
It's a closed book.
On the other hand, an observer's memory, m sub a, floating in a void without the physical universe to interact with, has nothing to measure. It has nothing to anchor its ruler against. Experience time, the flowing reality we all feel, is born in the exact spark when m sub a makes physical and cognitive contact with m sub u.
It's this beautiful, necessary synergy. The universe remembers in total silence, existing in this eternal state of stable resonance. Then the observer comes along, makes contact through their senses, and applies the scalar of time.
Exactly.
The observer gives the universe a position in time, a narrative history, a sequence of events. And in return, the universe gives the observer something stable and persistent enough to actually measure and interact with. Time is the gift the observer gives to the universe's persistence.
Which perfectly sets us up for the next major hurdle in this theory. Because if time is generated by this continuous contact, we have to look very closely at the nature of the contact itself.
And where it actually happens.
We have to look at the present moment. And this leads to Bhosale's analysis of what he calls the oscillating present and the geometry of consciousness.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a little bit disorienting. Bhosale challenges you, the reader, to find the present moment.
It's harder than it sounds.
I want you to try this right now. Seriously, as you are listening to the sound of my voice, try to pinpoint the exact razor-thin boundary of now. Catch the exact present moment.
You'll find that you can't do it.
You literally can't. By the time you say now, it's already a memory.
Exactly. You cannot find it because, as fundamental physics defines it, the present moment is a mathematical point. A mathematical point has 0 dimensions.
0.
It has 0 width. It has 0 duration. You cannot inhabit a boundary of 0 duration. You cannot experience something that has no temporal extent whatsoever.
So if the actual mathematical present is completely unexperienceable because it's infinitely thin, what on earth is this rich, thick, flowing feeling of now that we live in every single second of our waking life?
Right, the felt present.
When I drink a cup of coffee, that now feels like it lasts for a few seconds. But Griesel explains this by calling our brain an interference engine. Our brain never actually touches that static 0 point of the actual present.
It skirts right around it.
Instead, consciousness is engaged in a continuous, furious oscillation. One part of the neurological wave is always reaching backward, furiously pulling up our stored memory of what just happened a fraction of a second ago.
Yeah.
The other part of the wave is always reaching forward, building anticipations and micro-predictions of what is about to happen in the next fraction of a second.
It is wave mechanics directly applied to cognition. You have the backward-reaching wave of memory and the forward-reaching wave of anticipation. These two waves crash into each other right at the theoretical, dimensionless boundary of the present.
And they collide.
And what happens when two waves meet in physics? They create an interference pattern. In Bhosale's framework, that dynamic, overlapping, thick interference pattern is our experience of reality.
That's the thick now.
That is what cognitive psychologists refer to as the specious present, the felt, subjective now that seems to have a width of a few seconds. We don't actually live in the present. We live inside the interference pattern of our own biological oscillation between the past and the future.
To prove that we are actually an oscillating system rather than just a passive machine taking in data, Bhosale points to a famous neurological phenomenon called the McGurk effect.
This is a classic experiment.
If you haven't heard of this, look it up on YouTube later because it's wild and it'll break your brain. You watch a video of a person's mouth. The visual video clearly shows their lips forming the movements for the sound ga, ga, ga.
A hard G.
But the audio track playing over the video is actually a voice saying ba, ba, ba.
With a B.
So visual says ga, audio says ba. When you watch it, your brain doesn't hear ba or see ga. Your brain generates an entirely new hallucinated reality, and you distinctly hear the sound da, da, da.
With a D. It really exposes how the brain works. The standard way to think about the brain is like a desktop computer with distinct input ports. You have a video port for the eyes, an audio port for the ears.
Like USB cables.
But the McGurk effect proves that this metaphor is completely flawed. If you truly had separate sensory ports, your brain would just report an error or a conflict. It would say, video input says ga, audio input says ba.
Error 404.
But your brain doesn't report a conflict. It generates a completely unified, seamless, compromised reality.
Bhosale says the observer has no ports. I love that phrase. We do not listen through our ears and see through our eyes as if they are separate plumbing pipes feeding into a tank.
We are holistic.
We are one massive, unified resonating system making holistic contact with the universe. The eye is just one finger touching the surface of reality. The ear is another finger. But the observer is the whole hand.
We grasp the whole thing.
We take all that physical contact, feed it into our oscillating interference engine, and generate the most coherent reconstruction of reality that we possibly can. The senses sight, sound, touch are just filing categories that we conceptually apply after the unified contact event has already happened.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it leads to a truly profound philosophical payoff regarding how we view the universe itself. Physics, particularly Einstein's theory of general relativity, often points toward a model known as the block
The
universe.
block universe, okay.
This is the idea that the past, the present, and the future all exist simultaneously in a static, rigid, four-dimensional structure of space-time.
So it's all just there.
Yes, the universe isn't a movie playing out scene by scene on a screen. It's the entire static film reel, already printed, fully developed, sitting in the can.
And that's so profoundly counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because our entire lives feel like a story unfolding. I woke up, I made breakfast, I came to the studio. That felt like a sequence.
Of course it did.
But Bhosale explains this perfectly. The unfolding is not happening out there in the universe. The territory out there has no legend. The film reel is static. You are the projector.
You're the one moving.
Because your brain is an oscillating engine, constantly cycling between memory and anticipation, you can only process one single interference pattern at a time. The asymmetrical, one-way direction of your biological memory dictates the order. So you move your flashlight through the static block universe sequentially.
Illuminating one frame at a time.
You are generating the unfolding. The universe isn't happening to you. You're happening to the universe.
It's a very liberating perspective, in a strange way. The physical events are real, the causal structure of the block universe is real. But the sensation of passing time, the narrative arc of your life, the feeling of becoming that, is all generated entirely by the observer's motion through the static structure.
We're making the narrative.
Consciousness isn't a passive camera lens recording a moving world. Consciousness is the oscillation itself. Knowing itself from the inside out, moving through a frozen world and giving it the spark of sequence.
Okay, let me just pause and take a breath, because that is a massive amount to process. We're generating the sequence. We're the ones generating the time. This naturally leads to a massive structural question.
How do we do it?
Exactly. If we are doing all this heavy lifting, if we are the projectors, how is our internal instrument actually built? How do we handle things we don't understand or things that shock us? Posel tackles this by looking at the architecture of the observer, and he starts by taking aim at the concept of randomness. He brings up Einstein's famous stubborn objection to quantum mechanics: God does not play dice.
Yes. Einstein was deeply, fundamentally troubled by the idea proposed by the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which suggested that the universe, at its absolute foundation, had irreducible randomness baked into it.
That things just happen for no reason.
That things just happen purely by chance. Einstein believed there must be a hidden, deterministic order we just couldn't see yet. Posel argues that Einstein was entirely correct that the universe is lawful and ordered all the way down. God does not play dice.
But there's a catch.
There is. Posel adds a crucial, brilliant twist to this old debate. The dice do exist, but they belong entirely to the observer, not to the universe.
Think about what it actually means when you say something is random. According to this framework, an event only appears random when it arrives at your doorstep, and your observer memory, your M sub A, furiously searches its internal archives for a matching pattern, a prior experience, a logical sequence, and finds absolutely nothing.
It draws a blank.
The event exceeds your memory's current capacity to recognize its underlying causal order.
Exactly. Randomness is not a physical property of the natural world. Randomness is a property of the gap. It is the informational distance between the universe's perfect, lawful causal structure and the observer's current limited measuring capacity.
We're just blind to the pattern.
When we experience surprise or shock or seemingly chaotic events, we are actually projecting the shape of our own ignorance outward onto a universe that has never been anything but entirely lawful. As we learn, as we build better scientific tools, as our cultural memory expands, that gap shrinks.
Things become predictable.
What once looked like magic or random noise, like eclipses or diseases or weather patterns, reveals its hidden geometric order. The dice are put away because the observer's ruler got more precise.
But expanding our memory and shrinking that gap brings up a massive structural problem for the human brain. If we just kept accumulating memories, keeping every single detail of every single event forever to avoid being surprised, we would literally break.
Short circuit.
This is why Posel says that forgetting is not a mental failure. It is a vital biological necessity. He calls it instrument maintenance.
This is one of the most beautiful, deeply empathetic parts of his entire theory. Consider the horrifying alternative. What if you retained every single memory at 100% of its original emotional intensity? Every moment of crushing grief, every bitter humiliation from high school, every terrifying failure, burning in your mind as vividly as the exact second it happened, forever.
I can't even imagine.
Your comparison into that delicate interference pattern of your consciousness we talked about would become utterly saturated. The deafening noise of the past would completely drown out any ability to process the incoming data of the present. You would be paralyzed by the accumulated, undiminishing weight of your own history.
It would be unbearable. You couldn't function. So our brains are evolved to selectively forget. The emotional charge of past events is allowed to slowly fade, degrading over time.
It cools down.
This clearing of the emotional register is what keeps our measuring instrument functional. It literally creates the open, quiet internal space required for new events to arrive and be measured without bias.
And this has profound psychological implications for the human condition. Forgetting is the structural mathematical precondition for hope.
I love that. The mathematical precondition for hope.
Think about that. Hope requires a gap between what has already happened and what might happen next. If your memory held an undimmed, perfect record of every past disappointment and betrayal, you could never orient yourself toward a better future. The merciful degradation of memory is exactly what allows the finite observer to stand at the edge of the unknown and be willing to take another step forward.
That is so powerful. Forgetting is what allows us to be brave enough to face the future.
Oh, okay.
So now Bhosale takes this architecture of the individual observer, this oscillating, forgetting, sequence-generating engine, and asks, what happens when two of these complex engines crash into each other?
Real human interaction.
He gives us the literal physics of an argument. When two people are in a room, locked in a heated dispute, it's not just a clash of words or political ideas. It is a physical collision of scopes and scales. And he breaks down 4 distinct types of collision.
The first type of collision is annihilation. Imagine two people receive a piece of news so devastating or so completely outside either of their worldviews that neither of their memories can process it.
Like a mutual shock.
Their instruments saturate simultaneously. The interference pattern collapses. They are sitting in the same room, but experience time essentially stops for both of them because neither has a functioning ruler to measure the event. It's mutual shock.
The second type is absorption. This is your classic dominated argument. Think of a seasoned expert debating a novice.
A total mismatch.
One observer has a massive, highly loaded memory structure regarding the topic, and the other has a fragile, narrow scope. They collide, and the larger structure completely engulfs the smaller one. The person with the weaker framework abandons their own oscillation and gets pulled entirely into the gravitational orbit of the other person's reality.
The third type is resonance. This is the ideal human connection. Both oscillations are similar enough that the contact actually amplifies them both.
They sync up.
They share meaning, they reinforce each other's models, and the depth of the interference pattern grows for both observers simultaneously. It's the profound feeling of being truly understood by another person.
And the fourth is emergence. Two vastly different observers collide, and instead of one destroying the other, the friction of their meeting creates an entirely new configuration.
Something totally new.
A third entity, a new idea, or a shared reality, is born in the space between their two oscillations that neither of them could have possibly generated alone. It really makes you realize that every single interaction you have, from buying a coffee to marrying someone, is fundamentally a physics experiment between two memory engines.
Which serves as a perfect conceptual bridge. Because if our daily interactions are the collisions of finite memory engines, what happens when we push those engines to their absolute breaking limits?
The extremes.
What happens when we try to look at eternity, at the bizarre landscape of our dreams, and at what actually remains when the biological engine finally stops?
Let's start with eternity. I always thought eternity was just a really, really long time. But Bhosale gives us a strict structural definition of eternity within the ISL framework. And it's not endless time.
Endless time is just duration.
Right. If you were immortal, you could survive endless time if you just kept living day by day. Eternity is something else entirely.
According to Bhosale's rigorous definition, eternity is the full, simultaneous, dynamical spectrum of time. It is every single scale of time from the unimaginably brief Planck scale, which is 10 to the minus 43 seconds, all the way up to cosmological time, billions and billions of years.
All at once.
Eternity is all of those scales existing simultaneously without any single observer's limiting window applied to it.
Right, because every single one of us is a strictly finite observer. We only have a small biological window. We can perceive seconds, days, years, maybe decades if we're lucky.
We're locked into our scale.
With intense study, a historian can conceptually stabilize the scale of centuries, or a geologist can stabilize the scale of millions of years by looking at rock strata. but we are always looking through a constrained, narrow window. Eternity is the whole spectrum as it exists objectively in the universe, free from the limitations of our human measuring tape.
We can't grasp it.
We can point toward eternity, we can write math about it, but as finite biological beings, we can never fully inhabit it all at once.
But there is a specific biological state where we simulate a release from those rigid constraints. And that is where Bhosale's science of dreams becomes so incredibly compelling.
Dreams are so weird.
They are. When we are awake, our memory is strictly anchored to the present moment. The incoming sensory data from your eyes and ears acts as a massive gating mechanism, forcing your internal interference engine to deal with what is happening right now in the physical room you are sitting in.
But when you go to sleep, and specifically when you enter REM sleep, that heavy anchor to the present moment is completely lifted. The external world stops sending urgent signals. And without that waking anchor, your memory ranges completely freely across all the scales and times it has ever stored.
Because the sequential cause and effect logic of the waking world relies entirely on that present moment anchor, dream logic breaks down. Patterns in your brain connect by raw emotional resonance rather than linear causal order.
Which explains so much.
You are standing in your childhood home, but you are an adult, and the person talking to you is someone you only met yesterday at work. The emotional vividness spikes drastically because the memory architecture is operating without the dampening, regulating effect of waking physical reality.
And Bhosale addresses the listener directly here with a question that gave me absolute chills. If you're listening, think about this. Have you ever dreamed of a loved one who has passed away, and in the dream they felt incredibly, undeniably real? Not like a hazy, distant memory, but fully, tangibly present.
The framework provides a beautiful, deeply structural explanation for this phenomenon. Human memory does not store absence.
That's the key.
Your memory stored the complex pattern of that person, how they spoke, the cadence of their walk, the specific emotional weight of their presence in a room. That exact pattern is permanently encoded in your M sub A. The tragic fact that they are gone, their physical absence, is a fact that belongs exclusively to the waking present moment.
So when you dream, and the present moment anchor is removed, the absence is removed right along with it. In the boundless, unanchored landscape of your memory, that pattern is just as alive, just as vibrant, and just as real as it ever was.
It's not a hallucination.
You aren't hallucinating a ghost. You are experiencing the pure, encoded truth of their pattern within you, completely free from the tragic constraints of the current physical timeline.
Which transitions seamlessly into his analysis of what the dead actually leave behind. What are the mechanics of human legacy? When a finite observer dies, their specific biological window into eternity closes. The universe continues its geometry, but their unique oscillation stops.
So what persists?
Bhosale argues that an individual persists in the universe exactly at the scale at which they achieved competence while they were alive.
This is such a fascinating way to look at human history and impact. He contrasts two vastly different human lives. First, take a theoretical physicist like Stephen Hawking. Hawking spent his entire life building an internal memory architecture that could comprehend massive cosmological timescales, the birth of the universe, and the life cycle of black holes.
A massive scale.
Because he achieved extreme competence at that massive scale, his patterns, his theories, his equations, his models were encoded into the collective memory of the global physics community. As long as the discipline of physics exists, Stephen Hawking persists as an active, utilized pattern in the minds of scientists. He persists at a multi-century, perhaps millennial scale.
But Bhosale makes it very clear there is no moral hierarchy of value here, only a structural difference in scale. He contrasts Hawking with an ordinary, loving parent. The parent achieves profound, deep competence at the scale of human lives.
The daily scale.
They encode complex patterns of unconditional love, resilience, humor, and courage directly into the developing neural architecture of their children. Those children then encode it into their children. The parent's specific pattern persists with incredible fidelity for 3, maybe 4 generations.
The person themselves is physically gone, but the exact shape of their character continues to ripple through the family's actions and emotional responses. To be in eternity in this framework is not to be sitting on a fluffy cloud playing a harp.
It's much more active.
To be in eternity is to be in active use. Your patterns survive as long as the observers who come after you continue to actively use the memory architecture you helped build within them.
It's a deeply comforting and pragmatic view of immortality. We are all actively propagating the patterns of those who came before us, and we're constantly, daily encoding our own patterns into those around us. Which brings us to the final major theme of the archive, where Poe's grounds all of this cosmic and theoretical physics in the messy, beautiful, sometimes painful reality of everyday human relationships.
He starts by outlining the architecture of impression. When you meet someone new, say at a party, you're bringing your observer memory, your M sub A, into contact with their universal memory, their M sub U. But you only make a partial, highly surface-level contact.
Just the outer edges.
You notice their posture, the tone of their voice, their immediate reactions to your jokes. You build a quick, functional, internal model of who they are.
But Bhosale points out that every complex biological entity possesses hidden variables. These are real, deeply ingrained features of a person's character. Past unhealed traumas, deeply held quiet convictions, specific emotional trigger points that are simply not accessible in the opening moments of contact.
They're buried deep.
They only surface over time under specific life pressures or through deep, sustained intimacy.
This means your impression of someone is a temporal structure. It is never ever finished. You are constantly updating your internal model as their hidden variables slowly surface. Sometimes, a hidden variable surfaces that completely shatters your previous model, leading to a feeling of deep betrayal or a sudden paradigm shift in the relationship.
You realize you didn't know them.
You realize your confident first impression was only reading the shallowest, thinnest layer of their actual depth.
And this leads to Bhosale's profound structural definition of love. If another human being is a system of immense complexity with inexhaustible hidden variables, then love is not just a fleeting chemical feeling.
It's an orientation.
Love is the orientation formed around a person's perpetual recession. It is the sustained, active desire to keep reaching into their depths, knowing full well that you will never reach the bottom, never fully map their entirety. You love the inexhaustible mystery of their complexity.
To illustrate how different minds map this complexity, Bhosale writes this incredible fictional dialogue between himself, the physicist Roger Penrose, and Sherlock Holmes.
It sounds completely absurd on paper.
It sounds so bizarre, but it works so perfectly to explain his point.
It is a brilliant pedagogical tool. In the dialogue, Sherlock Holmes represents an observer with a massively loaded, highly specialized memory architecture in the domain of physical causal pattern.
The ultimate detective.
Holmes can look at the specific wear on a boot heel, cross-reference it with London soil types and weather patterns, and deduce a man's entire week. His M sub A is perfectly calibrated to extract hidden variables from the physical, inanimate world.
But then Bhosale points out Holmes' a glaring blind spot, which is exactly where Dr. Watson comes in. Watson represents an observer with a deeply loaded memory architecture in the domain of human emotional causality.
They see different things.
Where Holmes merely sees physical evidence of a scuffle, Watson sees fear, pride, hesitation, or relief in a suspect's eyes. Watson's M sub A is perfectly calibrated to read the emotional hidden variables that Holmes completely misses.
And the crucial takeaway here is that neither instrument is superior to the other. They are simply reading different domains of the exact same underlying reality. The physical truth of the boot heel and the emotional truth of the suspect's fear are both vital layers of the universe's structure, and it requires different types of highly specialized observers to accurately map them.
It's a defense of empathy.
It is a rigorous, physics-based defense of the validity of emotional intelligence as a literal form of physical measurement.
Which brings us to the final, most touching essay in the archive. An exploration of why human beings cry. Bhosale asks a simple question. Why does a baby cry the exact moment it is born?
The first breath.
We usually say it's just biology. It's to clear the lungs of fluid. But structurally, within this framework, it is the ultimate shock of separation. For 9 months in the womb, the baby was perfectly integrated. It had no boundary between itself and its environment.
It was one with the universe.
Suddenly, it is expelled into the cold world. The cry is the terrifying realization that the universe is no longer automatically providing for them. They are now separate, finite observers, and they must now summon the massive world's attention just to survive.
It is the birth of the gap between the observer and the universe. But then Bhosale asks the harder question, why do we cry as adults? It is not out of weakness. It is not necessarily because we are just overwhelmed by data. We cry structurally because genuine contact was made.
Think about your own life. Most of our days are spent skimming the surface. We have polite conversations at the grocery store, we do our jobs, our interference engine hums along at a very shallow, manageable depth.
We stay in the shallows.
But then, you hear a piece of music that completely pierces you. Or you witness an act of profound, unexpected selflessness. Or someone looks at you and understands you so deeply that they see past all your carefully constructed defenses. In that moment, your biological oscillation breaks through the shallow surface and reaches the absolute, vibrating depths of the universe, or the depths of another person's soul.
Tears are the body's physical report that maximum depth was achieved. It is the physiological signature of the observer's instrument functioning at its highest possible amplitude, making contact with the truth so profound, so structurally massive, that it cannot be processed by mere analytical thought.
Bhosale writes that the cry at birth and the cry at death are the exact same cry, just seen from opposite ends of the timeline. At birth, it is the shock of the instrument turning on and realizing its agonizing separation. At death, it is the shock of the instrument preparing to turn off, experiencing the final, ultimate contact with the universe it is about to merge back into. Every tear we shed in between is just a physical reminder that we are capable of touching the profound.
If we connect this all to the bigger picture, it brings us to the ultimate synthesis of the Atmabhan Papers. We are not passive spectators trapped in a mechanical, uncaring, ticking universe. We are the meaning makers.
We're the active ingredient.
We are the engines of sequence. The universe itself, in its stationary states and block geometry, is complete, static, and silent. It operates perfectly well without a narrative, without a before and after, without any inherent significance. It is a massive map with no legend.
We are the ones who write the legend. We generate the time, we invent the meaning, and Bhosale argues that this isn't some tragic illusion or a flaw in our brains. It is our cosmic function.
It's what we're for.
The universe is complete without meaning, but we are the ones who need it to survive, to connect, to love. Therefore, we create it out of the raw material of reality. We are the universe's way of finally experiencing its own depth.
It places an enormous, beautiful responsibility on the observer. The quality of the reality you experience every day is directly tied to the quality of the memory architecture you build, the scope of your attention, and your willingness to let your most cherished impressions be broken and rebuilt by the truth of new hidden variables.
It has been an absolute privilege to explore this mind-bending text with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the expansive world of the Atmabhan Papers. I want to remind you, the listener, that simply by listening to this, by wrestling with these concepts, you have actively altered your own measuring instrument.
Your architecture has changed.
The patterns of this conversation are now permanently encoded in your memory, ready to measure the next event the universe throws your way.
Indeed. The ruler you are holding has just changed its calibrations.
So we leave you with one final, lingering question to mull over as you go about your day. The universe spent 14 billion years expanding, cooling, and building the precise physical memory required to create you an observer capable of generating time, sequence, and narrative. If your memory and your attention are the rulers that actually measure and manifest the universe's meaning, what unseen, beautiful parts of reality will suddenly come into existence the moment you actively expand your capacity to care about them?